This is Macro Analytics, delivering frank conversations on global macroeconomics and market analysis, outside the mainstream, featuring discussions and debates between Gordon T. Long, publisher and editor of GordonTLong.com, and his guests. The content of this discussion is strictly the opinion of the participants. It is in no way a solicitation for business, nor is it to be considered investment advice of any sort. Always consult a registered investment advisor before making any investment decision. These discussions are extremely hard-hitting and terribly frank, and parental discretion is advised. Now, on to the show.
Good morning. I'm Gord Long with GordonTLong.com, and I have with me this morning Ty Andros. Ty is the president of TraderView, publisher of the TEDBits website, and writer and editor of his very well-recognized newsletter, also named TEDBits. Good morning, Ty. Welcome back to Macro Analytics.
Thank you for having me.
Ty, it's amazing how fast the month goes, and every time we get together, how many different things we have to talk about. And it's a nice time to be in this particular business because there's just so much to review. I'm sure you find the same thing.
It is extremely interesting, and of course, Gord, I believe this era will be written about and studied for centuries. It's a period of mass insanity, psychopaths and sociopaths, but we're going to see it through to the end, good, bad, or ugly, and we're here to help people to prepare and hopefully protect themselves in as many ways as they can and deal with it.
Ty, you've got a great article out as part of your series, Attack of the Locusts. Make sure we don't run out of time. I want to jump right into it this morning, and you brought some slides that distill your most recent article, and I wonder if you could just take our listeners through it here.
Something for nothing societies are societies where more people consume wealth than produce it. And the consumers get the upper hand in the voting booth and politically and create what I'll call a killing loop that leads to, a type of cannibalism. And it's the takers of wealth and eat the makers of wealth. And it's, cannibalism of the worst sort. But it is a pathology. It is unstoppable once it gets to the stage that we're in now. And we can see, something for nothing societies in different stages of development from Venezuela, Argentina, Europe, Southern Europe, Northern Europe, the United States. It's a virulent virus at this time, and it leads to nothing but a collapse of wealth production and living standard. It's a pathology that can't be reversed, and we're already, I'll call it, past the event horizon. And so you just have to know what's coming and try to position yourself to, of your knowledge of what's coming, to properly protect you and build your wealth. And it is the greatest opportunity in history. But it could be the demise. As you know, Gord, I believe that 80% of the wealth is going to end up in the hands of 20% of the people. And it's going to arrive there in a variety of ways. Some will be people like, the central bankers who have been playing this for centuries. And the other ones are just going to be astute investors who understand what's going on and invest accordingly.
When you say 80% of the wealth with 20%, Ty, that's actually somewhat of an expansion right now because I think it's down into the single digits are controlling 90% of the wealth at an accelerating rate. So,
well, those are the banksters that I speak about, but and they've been doing it for 400 years. No, I actually believe there's a pretty big group of people, you yourself and myself included, that really have studied history and prepared themselves and are working very hard on turning it into an opportunity rather than their demise.
I echo that again, Ty. Such a great opportunity because for the very first time, you truly can see what will unfold. We did our series with Global Insights, and we ended every show for best part of a year with, don't worry, they'll print the money. And, we argued at the time that we were below the event horizon and this would naturally and must unfold for reasons we laid out. And here we are now today with overt monetary financing And it's blatantly clear. We've just seen what happened in Japan and all of the what I'll call currency cartel regimes, the EU, the Japanese yen, the British sterling, and the US dollar. So it's unfolding. And what that means is because you know this path that they're on, you can start to make investment decisions that are less risky because it will unfold in this way. And one of them is it's the store of value. Money no longer will store that value. So the fixing of your paper becomes absolutely central to any of your investment decisions today. Whereas a year and a half ago, that was a debate you and I were always in, was it not?
It is, and I remember that we had a lot of listeners. We had a cult following us in those global insights. I mean, they didn't miss a beat. Turned out to be true words, and never truer than today. Right now the developed world's a fully operational something-for-nothing society, and once that happens, the vast majority become a mob and locusts. And they're just like locusts. They eat everything. They eat the field. They eat the seed corn. They eat the stalks. They eat the roots. They eat everything. And so they really get it to the point where there isn't even any money to invest in the future or take care of today. They consume today and tomorrow. And something for nothing societies are man-made. And it's a number of factors which combine to destroy the lives and futures of the majority of the citizens. And once these people get desperate, they are easily manipulated by fear. It really drives the final descent into collapse, economic and societal. And something for nothing people are dumbed down. You've seen the jaywalking stuff, but they're unable and unwilling to produce more than they consume and support themselves. They set off to consume those that do support themselves, and like I said earlier, it's the takers of wealth eat the makers of wealth. It's very bad cannibalism. There's really 5 elements to it. The first and foremost is getting onto a fiat currency system and destroying private property rights, because when you have the ability to own your own wealth and have it not be confiscated, you really get the fruits of your labor, and you're willing to work hard and be very productive. And they have to, and they, I mean society at large, have to destroy those human incentives. I'm an Austrian economist, and so many people just forget to talk about human behavior. And this is human behavior 101. The second element is they have to have centrally controlled public school systems. And, as Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations talked about, it's the ability of citizens to solve problems, be economically productive and self-reliant, and think for themselves and understand history, so they know its lessons. And that's really the bedrock of wealth of any country. And of course, it used to be the bedrock of wealth of the United States and Europe, but that's been undone. Then you need a mainstream media that reports misinformation as fact. And since we've already had people through the public school system, they become what Lenin calls useful idiots. And they really have been taught lies, things that are contrary to history, things that are contrary to nature, things that are contrary to Darwin and Mother Nature. And of course, they don't have any ability to think for themselves. And then the fourth element is they need to make the middle class into serfs and slaves to government and banks in one form or another. And then the last thing is these something for nothings really elect people that are mirrors of them. They are reflections of them, so that they're really robbing the very parts of their economies which are only hope of a prosperous future.
Just backtracking a little bit to your comments on education, a lot of our listeners are probably not familiar that we did actually a show or two on Tentacles of Deception, it was called. I refer everybody to our library, where we really got into what's happening with the educational systems around the world, but specifically in the United States. And I'd also reference more recently Michael Hudson, a very globally renowned economist, in a video presentation. I have the link up here now, where he was very clear in spelling out the seriousness of the educational system and, in fact, how it's being orchestrated in a manner that is, I'll use the word dumbing down, and I encourage our listeners to explore it. Sorry, Ty, I just think that it would help our listeners.
Well, it is so central to everything. I got a classical education. They didn't pass me until I knew how to do my reading, writing, and arithmetic. I was forced to read classical literature, discuss it, understand the Constitution, understand history, understand the Founding Fathers and why we've been blessed by God because of the way that they put things in order. And of course, those things are all gone. And, it was woven into me very early in my life. And of course, it's not being woven into kids at all. And actually, a second assault is happening on the educational system right now. And it's called the core curriculum. And it really has really come up since the chosen one in the White House became our leader. And it is a uniform dumbing down and I'll call it a renewing of what's unfolding, a renewing of the dumbing down and a far better organization of it. And it's a frightening thing. Actually, Glenn Beck's been talking about it recently. Next slide. Okay, the first element, like I said, is, putting in unsound money. And we had semi-sound money, as you know, Gord, until 1971, when Richard Nixon closed the gold window and virtually stole everybody's savings overnight. And all the gold and all the reserves and all the banks became the property of government rather than the property of the citizens. And money has 5, 6 different functions. It's a medium of exchange, a store of value, a measure of value, a standard of value, no one else's liability, redeemable, and it moves purchasing power through time and space. And that's what it was up to that point, even in a fractional reserve system. And we moved to what's called, I'll call it fake fiat money. And it stayed to being a medium of exchange, but it became an IOU. And it's really an IOU of morally and physically bankrupt governments. It's a device to confiscate wealth. It's redeemable in nothing, worth no more than the paper on what is printed, and it's printed endlessly. And, it's an insidious device. Really in today's society, Gord, do you know anybody that can tell you what money is other than show you a dollar bill?
Most emphatically not. I get into this conversation regularly, and I'm very fortunate if the eyes just simply don't glaze over, ever mind get an answer. And you're correctly pointing out, Ty, it's right at the core of the problem.
Well, they can't teach you this because all of a sudden the charade would end. And so it's, these economics and what is money and all these things have now been exercised. They're out of our society. No one tells people what has been working. I mean, it's now gone from, quoting Thomas Sowell, from doing what worked well to doing what sounds well. Okay. So we're really in a pickle. And I'd like to just read this thing from Keynes, because, Keynes is a lot misunderstood. Everyone likes to pick anecdotes of his, but, during certain periods he was very, very insightful. And in this case, he was. The best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. By a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens. There's no subtler, no surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction, and it does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose. And of course, inflation is a mysterious thing to people. They don't understand it, and even though there's a lot of people that say it's just money printing. But if it was just money printing, we'd have hyperinflation now. They've already printed enough money for hyperinflation. It's more than that. It's a collapse. It's a loss of trust. It's a debauching of people's living standards and their panic. And when he says debauch the currency, he means just debauch economies and societies. And this is the bedrock. This is the central string of the pathologies and the sociopaths we see today leading our countries.
We spent a lot of time last year discussing monetary malpractice, and a lot of that discussion was unsound money leading through to the magnitude of malinvestment and mispricing. But in parallel with that, Ty, we clearly laid out something called the moral malady, and that is all of the issues that have to and occur together in parallel. So it's a breakdown of the moral decay in a society that comes along that allows this process to happen and to accelerate. And we start to get into when things are delusional and distortions, then all of a sudden manipulation starts to occur, and it just gradually escalates, as this chart here shows. And that's what allows these things to happen until you eventually end up with completely dysfunctional markets.
Yeah, but it's driven by a desperation. It's been driven by a desperation of the inability to feed your family, the inability to make ends meet, the inability to understand what's going on. I mean, this is truly what they're doing. They prey on psychology, which they manufactured and created themselves. Okay. Notice how, in this chart, Gord, that, what happened it really started going vertical and when? 1971. And of course, wages haven't kept up with that, and that's part of that. This is where your bank account stays the same or grows a little every year, but your expenses really rocket out of control. And what they do is they print money and lend it to people and turn them into serfs and debt slaves. And we'll get to that in a minute. But, in 1971, gold and silver were basically, still kind of semi behind our dollars and were real money. And, like I got here, gold is the currency of kings and silver is the currency of merchants. Credit is the currency of slaves, and credit is not money. Well, in August of 71, Americans went from the top two categories to the bottom in one fell swoop.
What prompted Nixon to do that, Ty?
Well, fractional reserve gold systems are, I'll call it, disciplinary devices. And so you can run a fractional reserve gold system, but if you start having, I'm going to call it economic policies which destroy the ability of wealth creation, you start having to run on the bank. And either you change your policies back to those that create wealth and prosperity, or you're soon, all the fractional reserves are gone. And that's what was going on. They saw with the welfare, and they saw the Vietnam War, and they saw all the other great society stuff stacking up, and at the same time, a lot of foolish laws going into effect, and they knew that this was just the beginning of the end. And so they wanted to get out while the getting was good. There was a run going on the Fed. And, but money's now a government-sponsored monopoly, and it's designed to change the private sector in a land of serfs.
Exactly the point, Ty. There was a run going on with the Fed. Every country, specifically France, were demanding their money be exchanged in gold as part of the gold exchange transfer. What had led up to it, in my estimation, my studies, Ty, was not only Johnson's society of a social net that was being pushed forward, that was stretching the budget, but the real killer was the Vietnam War, which was the very first war that we had ever fought where we never asked the citizens to ante any money. Taxes didn't go up. war bonds, nothing. We did not do all the things that can't come with the war, because that's what people resent war, is it often not just the losing of your sons and your daughters, but the fact that it's so costly for you, the citizen. So suddenly we just charged it. We put it on a credit card, and we've done that ever since.
Well, that was the beginning of people in the United States thinking that they could have something without paying for it.
Exactly where I was going, Ty. Our theme here this morning is something for nothing, and that is exactly kind of the cusp and why it ties so quickly into the acceleration of unsound money. Ty, we're going to have to break here, but you've got some great materials. I want to continue. Can you give us some more time here this morning?
I can. I would love to just throw these three last thoughts in their quotes, but just to let the people know that this is nothing new. In the end, all paper money returns to its intrinsic value. Worthless. Voltaire. Nations are not ruined by one act of violence, but gradually and in almost imperceptible manner by the depreciation of their circulating currency through excessive quantity. Nicholas Copernicus in 1525. But we'll just get to money, and gold is nothing. Gold is money. Everything else is just credit. J.P. Morgan.
A man who understood both money and credit. Ty, we're going to break. We'll be back. I thank you for your time here today, but we'll continue this discussion. Talk to you later.
Yep, thank you.
This has been Gordon T. Long, editor and publisher of GordonTLong.com. New recordings are posted regularly and can be found at GordonTLong.com. New show notifications are available through RSS feed, iTunes, and other social networking venues at GordonTLong.com.